Welcome everyone. We're to the weekly webinar. Today we'll be talking about how we can use Tuva for our remote and hybrid math or science instruction. And I think what's helpful to think about, like, how can we leverage Tuva in this very unique time that we're sitting in, is to sort of go back to the basics of, like, what is Tuva? And remember, it's a full instructional program, right? Where we're bringing real world, authentic learning experiences into our instruction and using data, real world data that's from primary sources, be them government agencies, researchers at universities, different industries, that authentic data as the conduit for our students to have these authentic learning experiences. So it's more than a lesson, it's more than one activity, it's really a shifting how we're getting our students to work with data, which is important in both our math and science as well as other subjects beyond. For our math students and our math learners, the use of Tuva really promotes that conceptual understanding of key mathematical concepts that are traditionally really hard for our students to understand. We're making it visible and giving them the power to engage and making the decisions so that it makes more sense. And so the tools are fundamentally designed to enhance their conceptual understanding of those difficult data, modeling, specific math concepts that we know our students get tripped up on. So we're taking data that's relevant and real world, and we're leveraging these tools that are interactive and that are designed around how our students learn to help build and grow that conceptual understanding so they can have that really solid foundational base. Similarly, in our science classes, we can leverage Tuva and all Tuva has to offer to enable our science instruction to be done the way NGSS or really any of our state science standards at this point in the 21st century, in terms of how science instruction is meant to be, where our students are learning the phenomenon and the topics by engaging in and doing the science. They're actively working towards building that comprehension and their understanding. And so our Tuva tools and the data sets within them help our students understand how to use different graph types and different kinds of data analyses to make sense of that data, because data is what we use when we're doing science as we're building forward with our science. And so the key is, that's what Tuva is, that's how we can leverage Tuva. How do we do that in the unique environment that we're in this fall? So just a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about over the next few minutes. We'll kick off here in just a moment with a prompt, and then we will be talking, I'll be demoing, and we'll be talking through how we can find and assign content and sort of leverage that when we are maybe only sometimes with our students or never with our students, depending on whether or not we're in person, hybrid, or remote, which is so variable across all of our schools right now. And then we'll talk a bit about how can we track and grade our students' work within the Tuva interface and integrate that with Google Classroom if you have a premium account, to best make use of our time and make it most helpful for us and our learners as they're working with the data. And then we'll wrap up with some next steps and think about sort of where we go from here, and then we'll open it up for a question and answer session. So first, what I'd like you all to do is take a quick moment and sort of pause. We don't have time to pause these days. Pause and think about these questions. How are your students currently using data to learn their math concepts or their science content while learning from home? Be that you might be one of those lucky individuals where you're doing full in-person learning, but they're still learning at home. Some of us are learning at home far more than others. So reflect for yourself how you'd answer that question, as well as how is it going as they're using data to learn the instructional content that we're trying to put forward. What's not going so well? I invite those of you that are on the Zoom call today to post your responses in the chat box so we can share out as a community going forward. And I'm going to pause just for a few moments so those of you who have just joined us have time to kind of think and reflect on these couple questions. Okay. So what I would like to do, I encourage you to kind of keep reflecting and thinking about that. But what I would like to do is, pardon me, we're going to think about how we can assign and demo our content. So when we come to Tuva, we log in with our teacher account. Right, and we land on our dashboard. There's a wide range of resources here along the right side that are continually sort of changing and updating depending on what we think would be most useful for you all, or what we hear is most useful for you all. But so the big place that we want to start, right, though, is the content library. So let's imagine, for example, we are getting prepared for our, the work next week that we'll be doing with our ninth grade math students that are in Algebra 1. And we're looking for an activity where we can kind of recognize where our ninth graders' head are at, which is Halloween is coming, with our content of we're trying to work on linear relationships. So we can get a sense of we're looking for an activity, so we can start filtering it out by what we're looking for. And we're looking through here, and we can get a sense of like, ooh, M&Ms, those are looking exciting. So we can click on the assignment. We can take a look through it, getting a sense of what resources it has. This has both a student handout that you can import into your G Drive with a teacher guide, sort of walking through the expected responses that your students might provide, all of the wide range of content standards that it's hitting on. But more importantly, like, what are the objectives? What are our students going to get at? Does that actually match? Great, linear relationships. That's what I'm looking for. You can get a quick sense of what it's like either by scrolling through here, or we can review it in real time, the way that our students would see. And let's say you've looked through this and you're like, this hits what I need. This is perfect. We can assign it to our class. And so if you've set up your classes through your dashboard, you can pick a class to assign it to, and then we can give it a point value, and we can leave a comment for our students. Not 2 days ago. And then we know that it's been assigned to our class period. So what we can do is we can go back to the content library and we can keep looking for more content based on what's relevant to our subject area, or we can go look in and make sure, sort of double check, see how it's going. And so we can log into our class. And so we're brought here to our assignments page originally because we have different assignments already assigned to our class. We can look at it and we can say, oh, actually, I want to add a comment that they should collect their own data. So you can update those assignment instructions for your students from this page. You can get a sense of none of them have started it, right? We just assigned it. That's to be expected. But we can look through and get a sense of, okay, this assignment in relation to our other assignments, how are our students doing? Unfortunately, it looks like many of our students in this class haven't really logged in to check things, or at least they haven't started any of their activities. So we can look over to see what's going on with our students. This is something that I think is especially helpful while we're not interfacing with our students every day on a daily basis. We can check, when did they last log in, so that we can kind of provide them with some prompts that are more specific to what it is that's relevant, right? If they haven't logged in, then maybe the issue is them getting access or getting on the computer. If they've logged in, like it looks like many of my students have, but they haven't completed it, then it's that nudge of, remember, these assignments are coming up, make sure you complete them. If you need some help thinking about how to set your students up in your classes and how to grade activities, different things like that, I encourage you to check out the resources along the page. So my algebra students aren't doing so well in completing their assignments, but let's go back and look at how some of my middle school science students are doing, my 7th graders. So we can again look at the assignments page, get a sense of, this is an assignment that I assigned as part of their midterm that they need to complete by Monday. and get a sense that 7 haven't started, 3 are in progress, and 5 have already completed it. They're doing really well getting into it. So, but I'm curious to see how it's going for them. So there's some different things that we can do. We can look here by students to get a sense of for each individual student. So here's one of my students that has completed it. I can get a quick sense of where they're at with how they've done. Ooh, they've completed it, but it looks like they're actually missing quite a few responses. And so I can add some comments either in for a specific question type for the student, or I can add a comment overall, like, please try again. And post that comment to my students. So then the students will get an alert that they've received it. So this is what it looks like when we've got a student that has completed all of it. When they're still a work in progress, we'll get a sense of what they have responded to, the questions they have provided answers, as well as the questions that they haven't yet gotten to. And so we'll know that by either clicking on it and there's nothing yet provided. But what's really great, so that gives us a sense of how, right, each individual student's doing, and we can go in as we're reviewing, add comments and assign them their grade, their point values for the different activities. What can also be helpful is getting a sense of where the class overall is at, right? Like based on the individual questions of these different activities, that can give us a sense of what are they missing? What are they, are all of the students getting tripped up on this question? It feels like that as we're going through and assigning and adding comments to each individual. So we can click over to review by question to get a better sense of the class as a whole. So with our multiple response questions, we can get a quick view of what it looks like. When they're selecting different options, we can see how that's ranging across our different students' responses. And then as they're adding in their open response questions, we can again see sort of as they're typing in their responses, how is that varying across the whole class? So we have a way to look at across our class, how students are doing by questions, as well as by individual students, which gives us that extra opportunity, especially when we're not with them and we can't walk around and look over their shoulder and touch base with them in the moment as they're working on these assignments. We can give them individual feedback on specific questions, on the activity as a whole, and we can get that broader sense of how the full class is doing. So one other thing I just wanted to mention and honor is that we live in a very fluid time. And so I don't know about you, but many of the folks that I work with, it's not always the same week to week or month to month, which students are in which class. And so I just wanted to make a mention of the settings button within each class that you have. You can, if all of a sudden, your school goes remote and you're all now teaching virtual, and this class that used to be a B-day class has switched entirely to a different thing, you can always reassign it and without having to create a new class. You can just change the name so that it better aligns for your students, so it's easier for them to interface and follow along with everything else that's moving as we're going forward. So with the updates that Tuva's made to the assigning, and that you can assign across different types of instructional materials, and you can track your students and grade them by individual students and by questions, I think it gives us a lot more power to have a sense of how our students are doing, even when we're not with them. And we can sense sort of, where are they at? Are they logging in? Are they not logging in? Are they in progress? Are they not in progress? How, besides just knowing they've completed it, where are they in that progression? Did they get stuck? Are they stuck on question 5 because they don't know how to move forward? Are they stuck on question 5 because it was time for our synchronous Google Meets time, and then they're coming back to it? So we get a little bit more of an insight into how it's going for our students. Before I open it up for questions, I want to do a quick review of the different instructional materials that we have within Tuva. And so these show up when we're looking in our content library. You can select for these 3 different types of instructional materials. If you'd like to only search for activities, you can filter out the data sets or the data stories, which is really helpful is when you're jumping in and looking for materials to assign for your students. But I think it can be helpful to remember what they are and that all of them have a digital footprint. So these are all things that we can use with our students, regardless of whether or not we're in person or remote. The ones that have a print version, many, they're set up in the Google Drive, so you can just assign it and integrate that into your learning management system if that's helpful for your students that are at home. So our activities are what we were just reviewing. They're designed to take 20 minutes to one class period when we used to have class periods. So about 45 minutes or so. And they're designed to give students that opportunity to engage in inquiry as they explore those real world phenomenon and problems through pre-developed activities and lessons. Now they're different in our math and our science in what the focus is and the different scales of activities that we have. And so I encourage you to check those out depending on where your students are at and what you're specifically looking for. Are you looking for a more scaffolded experience or a more open-ended experience in our science? Are you looking for a more introductory to get the concepts? Or are you looking for more advanced how to apply those concepts in the math with the data that you're working with? Our data stories are designed to take about 10 to 20 minutes. They're shorter nuggets of opportunities for students to practice those data skills and to give the students opportunities to ask their own questions, evaluate information in different visual forms, and to make observations. So these are smaller nuggets just to get them engaged and hooked and interested, but the bar's lower in terms of what they have to complete. They're much shorter. And then we have our plethora of data sets that are all real world, content rich, related to all the standards. Our content team has been working around the clock all summer to make sure we're tagging all of these in ways that are relevant by the standards and the topic areas that we're all teaching and that are relevant to our curriculum. So that's a kind of quick tour of different ways we can leverage Tuva and the updates to Tuva and how we can leverage that to our advantage in this current space of being remote and hybrid and in-person and all flavors of ways that we're teaching our students this fall. So I encourage you to pause and reflect on these couple of questions as we're wrapping up this component of the session today, and we'll open it up for questions. So what 1 or 2 things can you take away from today that I just demonstrated of updates to Tuva or new components of Tuva more in your math and science instruction? And how can Tuva as an instructional program help you integrate data more into your remote, hybrid, or in-person instruction going forward? For those of you on the call today, I encourage you to drop your thoughts in the chat box so that we can share out with one another and share our lessons learned collectively across all the different time zones and locations that we are in at the moment. For those of you that are that don't want to share, that's fine. Just think about it for yourself. I think it's always helpful to kind of pause as we take in new information and think about what we can do. We're always helpful. We're always here to answer your questions and help and support you in whatever ways that you can. So you can reach out to me directly or to hello@tuvalabs.com, and we'd be happy to assist with the specifics of your situation. So with that, I'd like to thank you for participating in this demonstration. We're going to close out the recording and we're going to open it up to question and answers. And